Welcome to Mid-South Money. On this show, we talk to the movers and shakers, the who's who of Memphis and the greater Mid-South, entrepreneurs, innovators, influencers, politicians, athletes and coaches, nonprofit and business leaders. If you want to know how the money flows, please stay tuned.
Welcome to Mid-South Money. I'm your host, Phillip Cook. With me is my co-host, Harvey Cook. We thank you for tuning in. We are honored to have Memphis's one and only donut man, Don Deweese, on the show. Don purchased Gibson's Donuts in 1996. Gibson's has become an iconic Memphis business, not just because of the delicious donuts they serve, but because of the sense of community, camaraderie, and friendship that every customer feels when they walk through the front door. We invited Don on the show so he can share his story with all of Shelby County. Welcome to Mid-South Money, Don. So Don, my understanding is that you graduated from Mississippi State in 1969. Did you have any aspirations at that age to be entrepreneurial?
Nobody comes out of college and thinks they're going to be an entrepreneurial. So I went to work for J.C. Penney Company in Jackson, Tennessee. And I was responsible for boys, girls, and infants' clothes. Bought about $1.5 million worth of merchandise a year. And then I got transferred to Memphis after 1.5 years. Came here working for a manager that I was not just real happy to be with. He's from California. I don't think he understands the southern people of the United States. And I said, you know, I think I'm going to do something on my own.
Well, those experiences after Mississippi State, what did you learn from those that helped you in what you're doing now?
Well, after several situations, I learned that if you don't have 51% of the say-so, you don't need to be doing it.
Right.
So I opened up a company, the Trophy Center here in Memphis, and we made trophies for a couple of years and did pretty good. And I said, we need to create a little bit more income because I think I'd like to make a little bit more than this. So my wife had the idea to open up Deweese Young Sport, the first children's sporting goods store in the United States of America.
Really?
Everybody thought we were crazy. So we found a building next to Zurich Jewelers out on Poplar, right next to where Houston's is. Houston's was a Rexall drugstore at the time, and where you see Yacubian Jewelers, Daniel Yacubian Jewelers, and the bosses was this little house, and we had half of it. So we opened up Deweese Young Sport, and people thought we were crazy. We did very well. We opened up with Adidas, Nike, Umbro, Rollins. So when we called Adidas, we went to Atlanta to the sporting goods show when we bought some merchandise. Well, now you got to remember, I worked for J.C. Penney's for 1.5 years in Jackson and 1 year here. So I was used to reordering something so real good. So after the first week that we were open, actually the first couple of days, I called and reordered 750 pieces of Adidas children's merchandise. They hadn't sold that in the whole country. And they thought it was a joke. They did not believe me. And they says, Mr. Deweese, I understand what you're saying, but we don't understand it. I'm going to have to send somebody there. And the salesman for the Memphis area lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. They sent him to Memphis the next day to see our store, what we were doing, and they took the order for 750 pieces.
Wow, that's so interesting. So, Mr. Deweese, you've also had some other entrepreneurial ventures, including into the soccer world. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
All investments don't come out happy. I was the owner, 50% owner with Wise and Joyce Smith of the Memphis Storm professional soccer team here. We had a good team, won the championship the first year. Going into the second year, there were 8 teams in the league. We were doing good. And we bought the team the night before opening game because Cameron Trail went out of business. So Joyce and my wife Rita and Wise bought the team. So going into the second year, 4 of the teams folded. You can't have a real league with only 4 teams in it. If the 8 teams had stayed, we would have been fine. So that, after about a half a year of the second year, I could see the losses. So I got out. Wise people just don't realize how much money he lost in the next year or two trying to make professional sports popular here in Memphis, Tennessee. So you got to give him credit for that. I had back in the 70s, I owned a restaurant here in Memphis. We lost some money in it. But if you don't try, you're not going to ever succeed. But here's the key. You got to have money to make money. And I was born very lucky. I've been very, very blessed. So I mean, it hurt when you lose money, don't get me wrong. But it's hard for a person to just start in life and say, hey, I'm going to go on a soccer team, or I'm going to go on a donut shop, or I'm going to go do this and do that. So it really does take a little money to make money.
Don, we always hope that there's a lot of young people watching our show. So if someone were just getting ready to get out of college and they wanted to be an entrepreneur, they didn't want to work for anybody else, what kind of advice would you give to them?
It's not going to happen. First of all, you've got to have a degree to even have a chance in life. But that degree is a piece of paper. Just like that, they're going to give you a diploma and say, you've got a degree from here. But what that says is, you're smart enough to pass all of these courses and learn what you need to learn. And what that tells FedEx or Morgan & Keegan or Raymond James actually now, or AutoZone, that says that if you're smart enough to pass that, you should be smart enough to learn what we want you to do. So you've got to get some experience. You can't just take a 22-year-old and say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You've got to get some experience, but you cannot get it without that piece of paper. And it's harder each year as you go to get that. If a person gets an engineering degree, they're going to get a job in the real world quicker than, say, the degree I have, which was in business. Because that business degree does not teach me how to run a donut shop. That business degree does not teach me how to run a soccer team. That business degree does not teach me how to run a furniture store. But if you're smart enough to get through 4 years of college, you're smart enough to learn what it is, and that's why you've got to have that degree. The engineers, no matter what your engineering degree is, so many of those, a higher percentage of people get to be a chief executive office or in a corporation than a person with a business degree, because engineering solves problems.
Right.
And if you can solve that problem, they may think you can solve that problem in that corporation. But you hadn't got a chance without a degree. There was Drew Brown was a FedEx pilot. He was a person of color. He was the first person of color to ever have bombs under his wing in the Navy as a Navy pilot. And he gave motivational speeches all over the United States. And Fred Smith and FedEx let him go to give those speeches. You can Google him now. And he coached my third son, Britton's basketball team here at St. Dominic. And I went with him on a couple of those speeches. I went out into different zip codes here in Memphis, 38119, 38127 out in Fraser, 38111, 38108. He had those people in high school standing up screaming, just that motivation. It was it's called the American Dream. And it was education plus hard work equals, and I forget the last thing, but that's how important education is. And he traveled the world giving these speeches. And if you could see one of those videos of his, it's phenomenal.
I'm going to look it up.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
Don, let's talk Gibsons.
Yep.
What led you to the opportunity to become the Gibson's owner?
Well, as you can see, I hadn't missed any meals. So I used to eat breakfast there about 3-4 days a week. And Lowell Gibson was the owner. And I got to know Lowell real well over the years. And his son-in-law was a very, very famous cardiologist, Tracy Callister, out of Nashville. And he was one of the 3 people who invented this heart test that you could go in and dress just like we are with these coats on, put you on this table, and in 10 minutes they take a little x-ray and they can tell you if you have blockage in your heart. They can't tell you the percentage, but it shows calcium. And it saved thousands and thousands of lives. Any person with Raymond James should take that test because you're in an important position. Every CFO, CEO, every important person should take this. They have it here at several locations in Memphis. So he had some heart blockage, and his son-in-law said, "You've got to retire or they're going to take you out feet first." So we bought it at probably 25 cents on the dollar, and I bought it as an investment for my oldest son, Blair, who had gone to Mississippi State, got a degree in engineering, okay? Got a degree in engineering, and he ran it for 2 years, and the only time I went in there was to maybe relieve him on a Saturday or get my breakfast. And after 2 years, he decided that that's not what he wanted to do, so he moved to Italy to find himself, became fluent in Italian, and my wife took it over and ran it for 5 years. And after 5 years, she says, "I've had enough stress." So I took it over then and started running, and the rest is history. But I have my son Britton, my 3rd son Britton, is running it with me now, and I think we're a pretty good team.
So let me ask you about that. So obviously, my dad and I work together as a team. I feel like that's a blessing every day.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about how it's been working with your son?
Well, you got your ups and downs. We have arguments. We've had a couple of knockdown dragouts, but he's come along so much. At first, I said, I don't know if he can do it, but he can now. If something happened to me today, he's got it. He's learned a lot of hard lessons, but you only get this through experience. It's like going to work for that new company. You learn. He's made some errors, but he's done really, really good, and I'm very, very proud of him. I heard him overtell somebody one day. He didn't know I heard it, but it just made my whole year almost. I've always told him, you don't fix anything if it ain't broke. It's an old saying. And something happened in there, and I heard him say that. And I said, he's got it.
He was
He
listening.
got it. That made my year.
Right. Don, when my grandchildren are in town from Atlanta, I always bring them over to your place Saturday morning in their pajamas. That's their favorite thing to do, and we always have to wait in a long line to get inside. So it seems like
That line's not long because it's a long line, but it goes quick. We have 10 people behind the counter,
Right.
and you'll be inside that door, through that line, and done in 5 minutes.
I know that. So what I was going to ask you was, it seems like you're doing a lot of business. How do you compare to other donut shops?
Well, we've been very blessed, as I've told you, and there's a jigsaw puzzle that makes us why we're so famous. And we don't know how big each puzzle is. We don't know how many pieces is in that jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
But one of obviously the biggest piece is the quality of the product. One of the second biggest pieces is a tie between social media and customer service. So we pride ourselves on getting people through that line very quickly, very efficiently, and not holding them up. So that's your 3 biggest pieces of the puzzle. It's the product, social media, and customer service. And Mr. Gibson told me when we bought, he says, you're not opening a donut shop. You're running 2 businesses. You have a manufacturing business and you have a retail business. No matter how good your donut is, if you make the best donuts in the world and you have bad customer service out front, you're going out of business. He said, you can have the best customer service in the United States. If that donut's no good, you're not going to make it. So when you really look at it, we have 2 businesses, a retail shop and a manufacturing plant.
Let me follow up that question. Your service is fabulous, and the people that work there at the counter they're nice, congenial, they're efficient, they know what they're doing, and they make me want to come back. Tell me about the training and how you accomplish that.
Look, we hire some high school girls, we hire some college kids. We start them a lot more than any other restaurant is going to start people at an hourly wage, and we give them raises. I believe you get what you pay for, and that goes along with our help. We don't have a big turnover. We've got some girls that's been with us, still do. I've had our first chickadee is a veterinarian in Franklin, Tennessee now. The first girl, Kelsey Hayes, that we hired. I have a girl living in South America. We've got some that's got their college degrees, but we use mostly college girls and high school girls for the weekend. Now, we have our regular people who work during the week, but we try to use a mixture of male and females, minorities, and I think we got some good people.
Yeah,
We've had to let a couple go, but I don't know of any business that has 50 employees that's not going to have to make some changes that they don't. That's the hardest thing to do.
Don, what do you do? Obviously, y'all make a lot of donuts every day. What do y'all do with the donuts that you don't end up selling? Where do those donuts go?
Out in the cars and go home because we can't make enough now. On the weekends, we've had to go to 24 hours a day cooking, which we've never done before. Last Friday night and Saturday night, my son can look at either one of us can look on our telephone and see 8 cameras at the store. He said, Dad, I looked at them for 30 minutes, and he says, the only thing we had in the cases were what we were making that afternoon, trying to beef up the cakes that we make for the next day. He said, these people were coming in there and the line was there and they were still buying boxes, even though we only had Old Fashioned and Blueberry. He said they were taking boxes out at 9:30 at night. So it was nothing else in there available. So that's what management is. And so Brittany and I sat down and had a talk with each other. And we have 2 people that come in the afternoon, on Thursday afternoon for Friday, Friday afternoon for Saturday, Saturday afternoon for Sunday. We're going to bring 2 helpers in starting this week. So one can help one make cakes, one can help one do that, because we've got to make more donuts. It used to, we would put them on sale at 11 o'clock at night at 60% off, but we hardly ever have any of that anymore. I mean, and the reason that we've got to try to figure out more, because if you don't, you're going to have negative publicity on social media. So that's Britain's. I've gone into semi-retirement. I'm going to travel a little bit more. I'm going to take more time off, go to Mass each Sunday, meet my wife there. So he's working on it. And that was his idea, and that's why I said it's a team effort.
Don, before we close, anything else you'd like to say about the donut business or business in general?
Or the city of Memphis?
Or the city of Memphis?
Well, they renamed the street for me in 2009, I think it was, Don Deweese Boulevard, and that's one of the most humbling things that you could ever do, and it was a surprise to me. Kemp Conrad called George Bryan, my next door neighbor, Bryan Foods, and says, I'd like to do this, because they get to do 2, each city councilman can do 2. And so George went over and talked to Rita, and they had me surprised. And so Rita says, we've got to be down at City Hall next Wednesday or whatever it is. Your friend Pete Aviati is getting this award, and you got to wear a suit and tie. Well, I said, I'm not going to wear a suit and tie. I'll just go dressed like I am today, right. Casual. So I told her I was going out to Southern Hands with Bill Cecil in Collierville to have soul food. She says, well, I'm going with you. I said, Rita, you never go to eat with us guys at lunch. She said, I'm going today, because she knew I might not come back.
Right.
So we get down there, I had my suit on, and I walked in there and I saw my children, my grandchildren. I saw George Bryan, Haywood Smith, Lyndon Johnson, Chief Military Aide. I said, what's going on? And they says, well, I thought they was just going to make it a donut day, Gibson donut day or something like that. So they called me up there and they renamed the street. It's an honorary. You got Martin Luther King Boulevard, you got Elvis Presley Boulevard, you got Don Deweese Boulevard. So I started tearing up. I mean, it's a pretty humbling thing.
Right.
And I looked at Kemp Conrad and I said, Kemp, what are you doing here? I didn't even know he was on the city council, but he was a city councilman, and I just treated him like I would anybody. And now he's a super good friend, he and his wife Ann and Coco and little Kemp. So that was a big to do. And the city councilman says, Mr. Deweese, did you not know what was happening here today? And I said, no. He says, you really mean that you are 100% surprised? And I said, yes, I certainly am. And then she had a party that night at the house with like 80 people there. And she planned that whole thing as a surprise party.
Great.
We're the largest one owner, one location donut shop in America. Nobody's going to give you a dollar figure.
Wow.
But Dawn Food Products is the #1 bakery product in the world. And they're in Europe, South America, everywhere. And they say that nobody buys the amount of mix per week that we do.
Right.
Just a one owner, one location. There's places that will make them in a plant in a town and send them to 5 or 6 locations within the city, but nobody really does what we do. And then Alton Brown, we're his favorite. Everybody's heard of Alton Brown, and he comes in once a year. If he will tweet something or Instagram something, it'll have 250,000 views in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And Time Magazine did a 3-page article on him about 3 years ago. 3-page article, Time. And he does a food show. It's sold out in every city.
Sure.
And they asked him where the best food in America was. Not donuts. And his comment in Time Magazine was, without a doubt, Memphis, Tennessee, comma, Gibson Donuts has the best glazed donuts in America, and a Chinese pizza place in Des Moines, Iowa called Phones. You can't buy that kind of advertisement.
That's great. That's great. Don, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you for all you do for Memphis. You're one of the iconic people here, and I understand why. And we appreciate everything you do. Thank you for being with us.
It's been a pleasure. You come get a donut.
We will.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Mid-South Money. If you have any questions for our guest, for myself, or for Phillip, call me at 901-766-7769, or you can email me at harvey.cook@raymondjames.com.